Josh, you in the call, my friend?
Hey there. Yeah, thanks for the votes. Feel like I've won a big prize. It's great.
Good to speak to you, man. Good to meet
Yeah,
you.
you too.
Okay, Josh, why don't you start by just telling me what, I know you left the comment, but let's just forget about the comment. Let's just kind of start from where we're at.
Yeah, so I think
You.
the when I talk about strong emotional energy, I think anger is obviously, feels like the stronger one. So I guess
Mhm.
that's kind of a useful one to kind of hone in on possibly. But for me, I think because I've only come to it kind of recently with learning more about thought yoga, and it's it was having the kind of false impression that all emotions are linked to ego, so they're kind of not they're not really who you are, so they should, so in a sense, like early on in that understanding, it feels like emotions are to be overcome. But now I don't think like that because I understand that there's a human experience going on which has to be honored.
Yeah.
So so then it's finding the line between, understanding where the ego ends and where the kind of where anger is rightfully expressed, and maybe how an example of how it can be expressed in a healthy way, and not causing, not kind of spreading negative energy to others is a concern as well.
Hmm.
I don't want to be snappy with people, but I want to be, kind. I want to be authentic as possible. Basically, I just want to be as real as possible. I don't want to be putting up any resistance, holding on to any stored emotions which would be hindering me. So I guess, that's kind of my attempt at explaining it.
Okay. So this is something that I'll be speaking about a lot more recently, but on my break, I was mapping something out for the purposes of communicating a lot easier. So if you think of every uh, developmental stage of, you could say, the spiritual path, think of it as they're not really developmental stages. On one level, they look like a developmental stage. In other words, it looks like I leave a stage to enter a new higher stage. It seems like that, but it's not. But for the purposes of explanation, it's easier to see at first that there are stages that you leave. But I'm going to introduce a new dimension. Imagine that there's 7 octaves. The first octave is like an infant, pure experience, but no knowledge. Now, I'm going to go straight to the 8th octave, which is actually the first octave again. After it goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 is where this understanding gets fully, you could say, groundedly realized to the point where there's no state change. Usually we have an awakening, and that's what happens in the 5th octave. In the 5th octave, we have an awakening experience. And the 5th octave is defined by being in the 4th octave, which is worldview, when worldview is crystallized like an adult, right? Imagine an adult that's just finished being a teenager. Imagine there was a point where the teenager became, when the boy becomes a man, literally. At that stage, the worldview is crystallized, beliefs are crystallized, opinions are crystallized, the separate self is fully crystallized. So the 5th octave is defined by being in the 4th and having an awakening of the 7th octave, which is where most people who are searching non-duality on YouTube are at. That's the 5th octave. So what happens is the 2nd octave is where we start developing language. It's symbolic of the moment we say mama for the first time, or dada, right? We give name to a specific object. Though there's no separate self yet to define that I am the one claiming the name. It's just this has now some form. And that's where we define our mother or our parents. So then we go to this to the third, which is the development of knowledge. It's where knowledge begins. And that's where the second and the third, where the adventure mode, which you always hear me speak about so often, is most prominent, apart from when we get to the sixth. So once we're in the second and the third, um, development of knowledge is created. So we add knowledge that creates separation, creates duality, but then belief that duality is real then crystallizes in the fourth octave, and then we find ourselves in separation. So it seems like we leave the first octave, go to the second, then we leave the second, go to the third, and it seems like there's this hierarchy, right? Hierarchy of I'm advancing, I'm leveling up, so to speak. And a lot of the spiritual path is based on I get more spiritually advanced. But that's a one-dimensional view of the evolution of the human mind. Because the true view, if you want to put it that way, is that you never leave any octave and you never left an octave, or you never started without the octave. Every octave is experienced all at once, just like every sense perception right now is experienced all at once. So right now, just because you're hearing the sound of my voice doesn't mean you're not feeling the feet on the floor or the bum on the chair, right? Every word I use has in the moment top priority and top focus when I speak the word. But the word that I speak in the moment is just supplementing the rest of the words that I speak. You see? So if you have a sentence, there's no hierarchy of which word is more important, because every word supports the quality and meaning of the next or previous word. This is how the octave systems work. So the spiritual path, every level that we seem to advance into is not a process of hierarchy. It is literally there to support the quality and the meaning and experience of a prior octave. You see? So basically, your question, Josh, to map it in this model, what tends to happen is when we have not yet seen, for example, we're in the fourth and we've not yet seen the fifth, it doesn't make any sense for someone to say that God is the nature of reality to someone in the fourth octave who has not yet brought their attention to the fifth, because it's like you're just talking nonsense to that person at that time, you see. So in the same way, where you have believed that you've been in the fifth octave and heard people with distorted understanding who have not fully seen the eighth octave as emotions have to be avoided. You see, it's the common miscommunication, or that all anger is bad, or that you shouldn't feel any human emotion. Otherwise, you're not. Technically speaking, what that's saying is you're not on a high enough octave if you're still feeling human emotion. You see, but it's not true. So what we're actually understanding here is that everything should be felt in the octave that it exists. So fourth octave is duality. Duality, you don't get rid of duality. The fifth, sixth, seventh octaves are primarily there to actually enjoy the fourth octave more, including the first and the second and the third, you see? They're there to enhance the fourth. But then the fourth is there to enjoy the experience of the sixth, the seventh, the first, and do you see what I mean? Every octave is there to support the quality of experience in another octave. Isn't that beautiful? So the capacity to feel is what we are really experiencing in the fourth octave. And that is where the sixth octave, by the way, is the adventure mode. You've all heard me talk about that. Symbolic of the moment we give ourselves the freedom to suffer. Symbolic of the moment we give ourselves the freedom to explore. Symbolic of the time where we stop using knowledge to remove our suffering is the transition from the fifth to the sixth octave. Because you can't get to the seventh without the process of removing knowledge. Process of removing knowledge is basically letting go of everything we learned in the fourth octave. Is this making sense, Josh?
Sorry, I lost the lead button there. Yeah, that's a really interesting way of putting it. And I think the way I was describing it as stages and where I was in. Yeah, I love the analogy with the octaves on into music as well. It's like a nice links to frequencies and all this kind of stuff, high frequencies or whatever, I guess. I love the way it all connects each stage together.
Yeah.
And Yeah, I think that's like a really beautiful way of describing it. And I think that maybe at the stage I'm at now, I see kind of all emotional energy as more of a field of energy, less negative and positive. Um, at this stage, possibly I kind of don't maybe want to escape a negative feeling as much. But then there's obviously like my understanding is still stuck in the fourth, I think, because I'm still labeling things as where I'd want to be with experiencing different emotions. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So the reason that you have the because your question was about experiencing truth while experiencing heavy emotions. Well, you don't need to worry about whether or not you experience truth. It's more about understanding to what extent are you inhibiting truth. So whenever you're not resisting, that's what peace is. We may not notice it all the time because we usually associate that peace or happiness comes with some sort of feeling or state of mind. So it's as though we only notice happiness when there is an excitation, which basically means any excitation that is of, I don't even know the best way to phrase it, but any excitation that is high, right? High excitation is what we call excitement, joy. Some people call it happiness, even though happiness isn't reduced to just a high excitation. Low excitation is like sadness, grief. You see, frustration is in the middle. Or anger can be a high fluctuating like this. Anger's like
yeah,
this, frustration's like this, excitement and joy is like this, and then sadness or grief is like this. But none of those are bad. They're just excitations that you could say vibrated at a different rate. So what is it that creates the seemingly negative parts of those excitations? Like, why do we assume that they're bad? Why do we assume that if you have any of those, it's an unenlightened thing to have, right? It's because we resist those excitations. So if you resist sadness and grief, it doesn't matter that it's a low excitation. It's just high or low. Things come and go. It's just natural human experience. If you don't have that, if you don't have this, you can't have this. And we love a bit of that every now and again, sometimes a bit of this, right? It just depends. Now, if we resist any of those excitations, if you resist this, you get anxiety. If you resist the high excitations, that's what we get anxiety from. Anxiety is just excitement with resistance tied into it. If you resist this, you get sorrow, you get depression. And if you resist this, you get depression, right? When we feel depressed, it's because we have this suppressed vibration. And the depression, you've all been through this. You fear going here because you don't want to go back down here again. So you block any excitations from coming out. You freeze in the middle. And that's why we feel numb when we're depressed. When we're depressed, you can't get sad. You can't be sad if you're depressed. You should be praying to be sad if you're depressed. You should be praying to either get really sad or really happy, because at least then you've opened the floodgates. You see? So depression is that suppression on both, from getting to both places. Anger is a part of the capacity to feel. Even fear is the capacity to feel. We don't want to get rid of fear, anger, or any of these excitations. Now, what are the unhealthy, we say unhealthy, what are you could say the shadow interpretations of those experiences? This is what happens when you resist those excitations: anxiety, grief, sorry, not grief, anxiety, blame, shame, guilt, depression, hatred, right? This is love. Hatred is resisted love. You see, love is up here. It's a higher excitation. It's not really an excitation, but you understand what I mean, right? The experience of like loving someone, that type of feeling, not the ultimate sense of love. But yeah, love is just, hatred is just passion and love resisted. So whenever we resist a natural excitation, it comes with its counter, it comes with its like wonky twin, you see? And that's where blame, shame, guilt, hatred exist. And those are, if you've seen the levels of consciousness from David Hawkins. Is it David Hawkins or David Dawkins or something? You guys know what I'm on about, right? That guy, Dr. David Hawkins, Dr. Dr. David Hawkins, he created the levels of consciousness, right? And you've got all down here is hopelessness, anger, not anger. So I think anger's up actually in the middle. I think it is towards the middle, which is true. This is fine place for it to be. But it's like, yeah, shame, guilt, hatred, things like that. And then you get anger, which is actually towards the middle. Anger creates courage. Courage creates hope, or hope creates courage, whichever one it is. So anger is not a bad thing to experience, basically. So what we need to do is be basically able to bear the weight of all human experience, which actually therefore means we bear the weight of our own suffering, which is the transition from the fifth to the sixth octave, to bear the weight of our own suffering, which means I no longer want to get rid of my suffering anymore. You see? Would you rather listen to the Buddha that was able to bear the weight of his own suffering, or the Buddha who just ran from his suffering and never had to face it? You see? And I say that symbolically, that the answer to that question is the seed in you of authenticity. It's not that, oh, one Buddha is better than the other. It's that you know that one of them has faced that with true authenticity. You know it's authentic to face suffering. It's not a question, obviously, of what's who's better or who's not. It's a question of authenticity. So on a practical level, the sixth octave is about really entering pure play and curiosity again, which is the second octave mixed with understanding. The second octave, it's the second octave in reverse. Second octave is gaining knowledge, but without enough knowledge that we still have pure curiosity, joy, and wonder for life and play. Play is like the thing. Think of any 2/3 to like 10-year-old. It's just play. That's really what the second/third octave is about, is play. But in the third octave, you start to get a lot of knowledge then, which begins to crystallize into self-consciousness, which is what we experience of, am I cool? Am I being seen as worthy by amongst my peers in school? That type of thing. Is my hair look okay? Do I have food in my teeth? That self-consciousness that makes you anxious.
Yeah. I can remember the point in childhood and that switched over as well, for being and just totally making things up all the time.
But here's the thing. But look how all octave stages are important. So when I talk about that second and third octave of self-consciousness, it doesn't mean that is not a bad that is a bad thing, because what the second, third octave is actually being aware of the body-mind's image. But you could say, I don't like essentially calling it the unhealthy way, but you could sort of say the ignorant way to experience that at first. So when the human is in the developmental cycle of an infant, it hasn't yet gone through the third, the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh octaves. So it experiences that level of self-consciousness as anxiety, as fear. You see? However, once you go through the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth octave, the eighth octave is the transcendence of all the 7 octaves, which means you go back through the octaves again. And this is what we call the embodiment of the character. So in the second octave, it's where you cut your dreadlocks and you start having a normal haircut. It's where you start dressing normally again, you see? It's where you start saying, oh, I am a human being that lives in a human world, and appropriately to the place that I'm at, I dress appropriately. You see? It's still self-conscious, the conscious of a finite self, but you start dressing and behaving appropriately to society. You see? Ramana Maharshi could get away with it. He lived in India. They're all naked in India. in some degree or another. You see, when you're in the 70s or whenever Ramana Maharshi was alive, it was the thing. It was part of the culture. You see, but you don't walk around nowadays in your underwear, right, with a walking stick, because at least not in the Western world, it's not appropriate. So it's a part of it's a part of the integration process to actually be appropriate to the culture that you're in. Which means
It's sort of unconditioning to it as well.
Sorry?
Sort of being unconditioning to it all as well. Sort of you're conditioned and then you're unconditioning it all.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. You let go of the common traditional ideas that are learned in the fifth octave. All of the spiritual nonsense is learned in the fifth octave because people taste the seventh octave while still bearing fourth octave ideas. So when you combine the realization of our true nature with finite, you could say, limited perspectives of the fourth octave, you get this mix of truthy untruths. You get this blend of confusion. You see, you get this blend of we need to avoid the world and just prioritize the absolute. Or you get the blend of let's just just focus on the material world and get abundance and only have just an abundance of stuff, an abundance of objects. You see how the polarity works there within that realm?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, really useful. Yeah, it's brilliant. Brilliant to think of it through that explanation. Very useful.
So moving forward now, what is your understanding?
Um, Let me try and get my. I think rather than kind of stopping and sort of labeling everything like I have been as much, it's kind of continuing to be neutral on those experiences, emotional experiences, as in terms of whether I should be having them or not, but rather to be authentically letting them pass through me. Sort of
And
where
what
I'm
does
at,
it
I
mean
think.
for you to authentically let them through? What does that, what do you mean?
I think it's sort of it's getting rid of the habits of suppressing, so of contracting and holding in, masking. So it's like it's like I can recognize now when I contract and when I hold on to when I kind of when I for example I don't want to show that I'm angry, so I'll cover it up and I'll smile. So rather than kind of having some form of um, way of like covering up, you know, to be authentic is would be to express it, um, and to kind of like use to be expressing that energy rather than kind of holding on to it, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. If you're angry in a situation, you know, it's so simple that it's quite crazy. The anger will only be processed in a ineffective way if we are not embracing the anger as natural. Any emotion that we deem as unnatural will be resisted. So whenever the anger is seen as unnatural, I mean this applies to every emotion, but anger is the most vigorous one. So we'll just go with that because it'll be probably the if you can do it with anger, you can basically, if you understand it with anger, it applies to everything. So when the anger is seen as unnatural, we've all had this experience where I shouldn't feel this way because they did this, or I shouldn't feel this way because life did this, or for some reason, God allowed this to happen. And we'll always create a separate identity, a limited self. We'll create a separate God or a separate person who's involved in this crime, right? And then between the two, we create the separation and we create friction between that in order to try and get rid of the anger because we're not processing it. And that's what blame is. Blame is the mechanism that we use to try and process the experience of an excitation that we do not want to have be there. So we call that blame. Blame is simply, I do not know how best else to process this excitation. I will put it onto something or someone else. Which is why people physically are violent when they're angry, can be. They punch things, right? It's why it's symbolic of like breaking things. It's because we do not know what to do with such a degree of excitation that we don't believe is natural. I shouldn't be feeling this way. This isn't how I should feel. And why shouldn't I feel this way? Because, and then the because-ness is our reasoning to try and get it out of our system. So we just noticed that the best thing to do is realize the naturalness of all human emotion, literally. So the best thing to do is like, how would you describe it? If you were in a situation with a partner and you got angry, you would say, I do not blame you, but I'm experiencing anger, right? Do I have the say? Can I be angry without you thinking that I'm angry at you, right? In an emotionally intelligent relationship, they should say, oh my God, absolutely. Yeah, I totally have space to feel what you feel, right? And that's going to be, imagine how liberating that would be for you to know that you can be angry and in the context of the situation which that person is included in, but for them to know you don't blame them and for you to not blame them. Could you imagine how beautiful that experience would actually be? The connection that you'd have with that person, that you were able to be angry, not blame them, even though they are a part of the context in which you were angry originally, and to not blame them yourself. So imagine you told yourself that. Imagine that was your primary understanding for anger, was that you know that my attempt to blame is my attempt to avoid what I'm feeling because I do not think it's natural and because I do not want to face it for whatever reason, because it's a high intense excitation.
Yeah, that's great. I love the usable example there as well because it's quite a complex one to, I think, from being brought up to generally cover up anger. There's it's really useful to kind of have an idea of like what it would look like healthily without the blame aspect, because people automatically, I think, sometimes feel anger is directed at them as well. So then there has to be an explanation from you to make sure that you're not blaming them if you
Yes,
suddenly get frustrated, because that's sort of that spreads negative, makes them feel bad as well, doesn't it? So yeah, that's great. Yeah, I really enjoyed your explanation.
cool. I hope that brings clarity. Thank you for
Yeah,
the
thanks so
time taken.
much. Yeah, thanks so much for that. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Tiago, where are you too, man?
So Saja, I tried to message him because he's not in the call and I didn't get any response. So the
Okay,
third most voted one would be Steve, I think.
perfect. Steve, you there, buddy?
Hey,
Hey, how's it going, man? Just getting a question about.
lucky me.
Sorry?
Lucky me.
Lucky you. Lucky me. I get to speak to you. Okay. I wanted to take the burning spear of thought yoga and repeatedly stab the shell that surrounds the purity of being. The paper thin shell constructed by the ego mind of fear seems to be an obstacle, but it is not. The inside of the shell painted murals of destruction and fear, so it seems formidable. Lollipops won't do the trick. Perfect. Okay, so I need you to translate this into Saja language because I'm so dyslexic. Beautiful writing, very
Yeah,
creative.
yeah, yeah. Sorry for
I need a
the the,
little,
the poetry there.
yeah.
Actually, the first thing that comes to my mind is I have been feeling a lot. Um, I hesitate to put it in words because I think this is kind of like goes back to the existential zest that you talk about, but just kind of noticing it a little bit more, which I feel like is serendipitous, is good. I give all credit to Thought Yoga, and I hope that encourages other people to continue to implement it throughout all of life, kind of exploring it that way. So um, I guess if I could boil down to a question, it would be, I still kind of feel a lack of purpose. Um, like why am I here? You know, like not just to do a job. And I'm wondering if that's like needs to be resolved, or is that something that like it's so clear that you have a purpose and what your purpose is, and you're like living your best life.
But
And
but Steve, I want to pause you there. Why do you think it's clear that I have a purpose?
like you know where you're going and what you're doing, you know.
Why?
I guess I'm speaking more figuratively. You you know, you have the confidence that you're you're doing what gives you the most joy.
Ah, do you hear what you were about to say, but then you just corrected it? You were about to say, I'm doing what makes me happy. I'm not. I'm happy, and I'm doing what is the result of that. You see? So do you see why this purpose, this question of purpose is within you? Because there's still a belief that life will be better when you have purpose. You see what I mean? There's still a fragrance of, oh, but having a purpose and living a life like this would be better than this. You see?
Yeah, I do.
Which is another form of conditional happiness, which means there's a part of you that still has a trace of belief that happiness exists in the world. It's a subtle one. It was one of the biggest conditions for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so subtle, because it's tied with something so genuine. The genuine thing is, it is good to do what you love. That is something we should do. But the challenge is, what is it that we really love? That's the question. What we really love is happiness. Happiness is primary. So, whereas we should absolutely, and this is again why it gets challenging, we should absolutely do the things we need to do on the level of the world. But while we're doing those things, our heart is devoted to the truth, which is happiness itself and where that really comes from. So whenever you feel the urge to find purpose, what you're really looking for is the meaning of life. Your soul is trying to come back to the true purpose of life. And what is the purpose of life?
Happiness, to live it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's only one purpose, happiness, either to find it or to express it.
Right.
But it's the same thing, still happiness. It's the only two options. This isn't just the meaning of life. It's the only meaning there could ever be. It's not like out of all the meanings, which is the most meaningful? There's no other possibility. You see what I mean? So it's literally, you have to realize this. There's no other option. There's no other option. There's no purpose like, oh, maybe my purpose is to be a doctor. Maybe my purpose is to be a spiritual teacher. Maybe my purpose is, those aren't purposes. They're expressions of something. What are the expressions of? Expressions of happiness. So the purpose is happiness. There's no other alternative. We cannot find another alternative. I'll pay someone all the money in my bank account if they can find me another alternative. There's no other alternative. I will bet my life on it. There's no other possibility. The only option there is happiness, either to find it or to express it. Everything else is a category within one of those two things. It's a dissection within one of those two things. See what I mean?
Well, yeah, I do. And it seems
and
like
I don't just mean as a job. I know I'm drilling the point right now, but I don't just even mean as a job. I mean literally every single thought or feeling you will think from this moment moving forward is literally predicated upon either the search or the celebration of happiness, which is ultimately the same as the search or the celebration of truth or God or reality.
Okay. So when you say search of happiness, you know, for happiness to be all there is underneath everything, and it must be so obvious, right? It just must be so obvious. And yet here we all are. Not all the rest of you in the chat, but kind of in that search. So what you're saying search, you're not saying search for the things in the world to be the cause of happiness. Like, for example, even using manifestation, and you know, kind of creating the world that you want. It kind of can get complicated, because you're still searching for happiness potentially by like, oh, I want my bank account to have X amount, and I'm gonna do the Neville Goddard thing and use thought yoga. But that's just a crude example. But I'm just wondering, with a search for happiness, can you like define that a little bit more?
So the search for happiness is the inevitable consequence of not being happy. So the minute that you're not happy, every action will literally take you like a gravitational force back to happiness. So it means that if you're not, if there is a subtle resistance in any way, shape, or form to experience, every thought, feeling, or action that you partake in from that minute moving forward until you're happy again will be in direction of going to that happiness. Now, if you believe happiness is conditional, then your mind's interpretation of where to find happiness will be recited towards the world. It means that you will continuously suffer until you're then happy. Then you will suffer until you're then happy. Then you'll suffer until you're then happy. And you'll do that lifetime after lifetime until eventually you find the source of happiness. Then you live celebrating that happiness, which I'm putting in PG terms. It basically means realizing that you're God and celebrating for the rest of eternity that the fact is that you're God.
Sounds cool.
So God goes on a hero's journey and realizes God is God, and then God forgets about being God because God doesn't even care about being God because he's God or she is God. I'm male, so I'm going to use he pronouns, and just lives. So when I say seeking, there's only two options: to find happiness or to search it. What I mean is that when we're not happy, it's because we're resisting experience. And if we're resisting experience, it's because we believe we're separate from experience. You can only create resistance with this two, right? You need resistance to create sparks. You need two things. And once you hit two things together, you get two things. Not everything is going to do that, but you know what I mean. Flint and steel creates the spark. What spark are we creating when we have this resistance? The spark of the separate self, the spark of suffering, the spark of resistance. So the question is, once we know this, what is the next best step? Well, the next best step, even if we were to forget everything that I just said, we would still go search for happiness anyway. We just find it in a long progressive path. We just go and do it with more spiritual books again, or cars, or money, or whatever, right? To some degree, though, we will be doing that search. So the next best question is, well, if that's what I'm going to be doing anyway, if I'm not happy, unconditionally happy, what's the direct path to find happiness? How do I cut the search? How do I take the search from taking 20,000 miles to taking 1 mile or 2 miles or 0 miles? You see, how do I just be there?
Yeah.
That's the next best question. Because think about it, you can't just stop searching if you don't feel inherently happy, right?
Right.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
However, you can if you have understanding. So this is how you transition from the fifth to the sixth octave. The fifth octave is what we're talking about right now. The fifth octave is I've had a spiritual understanding, but I still have fourth worldview.
Mm.
And not just the fourth worldview, you still have the intellect created that was created in the third and the fourth octave. Who taught you, Steve, when you were in the third octave?
The
That means
world.
when you were like a teenager to young adult.
Yeah. So teachers and
Yeah.
parents.
Yeah. Do they live how you want to live? Are they as happy as you would like to be?
No.
No. So you shouldn't. They, by the way, created your intellect. They helped you build and refine your intellect. Your intellect is the capacity to see truth. So if you learned to develop your intellect from someone who does not live the way you'd like to live or isn't as happy as you'd like to be, you can rest assured that your intellect is still this, like, it still has the conditioning created by those people who taught you and the world at the time that helped you define it. So basically, the same people who told you Santa Claus existed, you're still running on that operating system until the true transition from fifth to sixth is made. This is where you take your intellect into your own hands. You stop saying, this is who I'm going to let show me what is true. You start saying, I am going to show myself what is true, which means you have to start devoting to yourself as the leading authority on your life. That is the activation of the intellect. In that process, obviously, you will have guiding principles such as thought yoga, such as these calls, but the true goal is your own autonomy, which means you have to take every other form of authority off the pedestal. That means every scientist, every philosopher, anyone you've ever given any credit as being more intelligent than you must take them off the pedestal.
Okay. And, you know, I've always been searching for just a certainty, just some sort of certainty, you know, about all the truths that you've heard in your life. And there's a ring of truth, but there's not like that certainty that, um, and maybe it's because we're looking for it, or myself is looking for it in some sort of proof, like for happiness, you know. And I can
You want proof for happiness?
for, you know, what, for the definition of what is the infinite nature of it, you know. I can't really glimpse that.
The infinite nature of happiness, or the
Yeah,
infinite nature of yourself?
I guess both.
Yeah, because they are the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your definition of infinite?
I guess my Saja definition would be no
What's your
limitations.
definition? What do
Um,
actually, like, what is your genuine belief
Okay.
in what infinite is and what it means?
I guess all there is encompassing.
That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't at all. um,
Just don't make
but
it up. If you're not sure, that is also an answer. Don't just give me an answer because I asked you the question.
okay.
If it's more true that you're actually not sure, that is also a valid answer.
Yeah. I guess that's where I would start is I'm not sure 100%. Doesn't come to my
Perfect. So I want this to be an example for everyone. Do you see what just happened there? I asked Steve a question, and the minute I asked him the question, first of all, he went to resort to what I've said in the past. Then I said, don't resort to what I've said in the past, resort to what you think. The first time he went to resort to what he thought, he went to knowledge he's thought in the past. So he either went to my knowledge, his knowledge. The point is, Steve, you went to knowledge every time I asked you the question. Now, do you see this is what the fifth octave will do? Is that you will resort to knowledge. That how could you ever move into the sixth and seventh octaves when you still hold on to knowledge of the fourth? It doesn't make any sense. Now, the reason, Steve, that you struggled there when I asked you the question wasn't because you don't know. It's because you kept resorting to knowledge. You kept resorting to an object. You didn't want to face the complete oblivion of not knowing. And because of that, this is what the unactivated intellect will do. So in order to start activating that intellect, you've got to get used to the oblivion. You've got to get used to the oblivion of not knowing. You've got to really, really, truly sit there and not know a single thing. And then that's where the opportunity for knowing comes in, which is true understanding. True knowledge is understanding.
I really love that. Yeah, I really love the. How do you approach the not knowing? Because there seems to be a battle against that.
Before we
Oh,
go
yeah.
there, because we're still on another track, which I
Okay, sure.
So I asked you the question. So you asked me the question, how do I see that I'm infinite? I still don't have proof yet that I'm infinite. And then I asked you, what does it even mean to be infinite? And you don't even know what it means. You don't even. So just put this into your head, right? Your mind has to see the ridiculousness of this. How would you ever expect to have proof of being infinite if you don't even know what infinite is? If you don't even understand the concept? It's like saying, I really want to see a hyperglothic trail. What is a hyperglothic trail? I don't know. How would you know it then? You could be seeing it. It could be everywhere, but you don't even have a. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I want to see a green apple. What do they look like? I don't know. Well, you could be looking at green apples all day, but you'd never know. Do you see what I mean? So the point I'm making is that it is very valid to be clear about what it is that we're looking for before we look for it or expect to experience it. Does that make sense? So coming back to the question, what does it mean to be infinite? Well, what does it mean to be finite? Because infinite is something that is the absence of something. So we can define infinite by looking at the absence. This is a thought yoga, you could say a thought yoga rule. One of the rules of thought yoga, you can help define the existence of something by the absence of something by looking at the existence of something else. So how we can define the infinite by looking at the finite, which is what we can define, right? Because by definition, it's easy to define the finite. Finite things are limited, right? And being limited means it has size and shape, because that's the definition of being limited, something that can be contained, something that can be measured, right? I'll let you carry on.
Something you can locate, something in time and space.
Yes, exactly. Perfect. Right. So now tell me, what's the definition of being infinite? Think about it. The definition of that is finite. What we just defined is finite. So what would infinite be?
It would be transcendent of all those.
Exactly. So how would you define something transcendent of all of those?
I guess is that where the I don't know is applied? Because
no, because you do know.
I do know.
You do, because we just discussed it. So base the line of reasoning off the line of reasoning we took before. So you understood the finite by looking at the finite qualities, right? By seeing that something finite is limited, something limited is measured, it's in time and space, it can be contained. And then I said, okay, then perfect. So what would infinite be, which is the opposite of that? Well, it would be something that
that transcends those?
Yes. And if you were to elaborate, how would you explain it? Using exactly what we just said. So if something finite is located,
Yeah,
then something
So-
infinite is
has no location.
perfect. Carry on.
Okay, so then if it's something that is in time, then it would something that would be transcendent of time.
Yes.
Okay, so if it's something that has a shape, then it would have no shape and no form.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Um, what else am I missing?
Well, keep thinking about finite things and then reverse it.
Okay. If it's something that felt like it was in the body, located in the body,
Hmm.
then it would be something that is not limited to the body.
Exactly.
Okay. I think I get the so that applies to the mind as well. The one who thinks that he's a thinker, the one who thinks that he creates his thoughts.
Well,
Uh,
think
um,
there's only thoughts and the one that experiences thoughts, right?
right.
So do you experience a thought right now when you think one?
Yeah.
Perfect. So is that one that is aware of thought also aware of itself?
Yes.
Is a thought aware? Or are you aware of the thought?
I'm aware of the thought.
Perfect. So thoughts aren't aware of thoughts, correct?
Yeah.
So you are aware of whatever is aware of the thought. Now, are you a separate thing to the one that is aware of the thought?
No.
No, you are the one that is aware of the thought, right?
Right. Yep. Follow you.
Perfect. So the one that's aware of itself is obviously aware, right?
Hmm.
Now, could awareness be something other than awareness?
No.
No. How would it be possible, right?
Hmm.
What else? But awareness has to have the primary mode of being aware. That's what defines it as awareness. That's what defines its actual existence.
Hmm.
There's no other. Could you find another definable quality to awareness other than the fact that you know it?
Oh, no, I can't.
No. Why can't you?
It's kind of funny, actually.
Tell me.
I have no answer.
Exactly. You don't have an answer. No, I really want to push the question though. Why is it that you can't come to an answer?
Hmm.
Are you aware of my hand?
Yeah, I'm
How do you know?
pretty obvious
Perfect. Tell me why.
because you're putting it up in my face.
Perfect. And you can tell me what are the reasons?
There's the perceptions.
Yeah, like
that are happening,
what?
and visual perceptions,
Yeah.
and then your audio that goes along with it, and you're moving it around, motions, you know.
Perfect. So you can define it, right? Because it
Mhm.
has limited qualities, correct?
Yep.
Now, why can't you tell me about awareness?
Well, experience, like experiencing, I guess, would that be another word for it?
No.
No.
Well, yes, but think of it like this. The reason you can define my hand is because you can see it. You can, well, technically right now you can see it. But in any other instance, you would be able to feel it. You could hear it if I did this. You would see its existence because there's limited finite qualities. Now, are you present?
Mm-hmm.
Is awareness present?
Yes.
Is that obvious to you?
Yes. Completely
Is it as
obvious.
obvious as the fact my hand is here?
Yep.
So if it's so obvious as the fact my hand is here, why is it you can describe my hand, but you can't describe awareness?
What are you doing, man? I don't know. You're doing some magic trick. Man, I don't know. It's
Could it be, Steve, partly down to the fact that it doesn't have any finite qualities to
yeah,
describe?
yeah.
That wasn't a confident yes. Can you find any definable qualities to awareness? Any limited qualities?
I hesitate to open that bag of worms, but
So why?
I guess sometimes I can get locked into like the energies that I'm feeling, you
Yeah,
know?
sometimes you do, but not right now. So tell me about right now.
Yeah. There's just there's no definable qualities to, if there was a definable quality, then that would just be another perception.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And just like you rightly described, a perception is akin to a thought. A thought, a feeling, a sight, a smell, a touch, they're all perceptions. And you know that thoughts aren't aware, you know that sights aren't aware, you know that tastes aren't aware, you know that perceptions aren't themselves aware. You are aware of perceptions. So
Hmm.
you are the one that is aware. So do you find a limitation to yourself?
If I go into the realm of trying to describe it, is that
No, that's the realm I'm trying to get you to describe. So, Steve, is it obvious to you
yeah.
that awareness is present?
Yes.
So you're able to experience awareness, correct?
Hmm.
Okay, if you can experience it, then tell me about it.
Maybe I can't experience it.
But you can experience it because you just answered yes to the question. You wouldn't have answered yes to the question if you weren't aware of it, because you wouldn't have been aware. You wouldn't have been able to check, oh, yes, I can experience it, and answer yes to the question.
Okay.
If you weren't aware, you wouldn't even be able to hear me. So,
Yes.
so Steve, we just defined what something finite would be by listing its limited qualities. You, if something didn't have limited qualities, would you be able to experience it in a normal way?
I expect not.
No, absolutely not. Why? Because, well, it doesn't have a smell, it doesn't have a touch, it doesn't have a taste, you can't hear it, you can't see it. So you're trying to look with your mind, but what I want you to see is the one that's looking. That's awareness itself. It won't be a normal experience. It is like knowing nothing. It's akin to like knowing nothing.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was laughing earlier.
Well, what would you call that? Something that isn't limited, something that cannot be described, something that exists yet has no limited form or quality.
So you're pointing towards what would be the infinite?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you expect the infinite to be something more than that, then you're still expecting the infinite to have a quality, a limited finite quality. So that is the proof that you are infinite. You just experience the fact that you do not have any limitation. Now, you either trust that because you believe, or not believe, but you know you have the clarity to see truth when it is seen, or you will doubt yourself and believe, no, 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 this can't be it. This can't be true. This is why it's important to refine the intellect, because think about it, everyone on the planet is experiencing that every single day. There's non-stop. It's 24/7. You can't experience anything else. Why is it then that not everybody's unconditionally happy? Because we experience the infinite. We don't know that that's what it is. So it's kind of like, it's like sitting on the treasure, the analogy of sitting on the treasure chest, the homeless man with the gold in the treasure chest, sits there all day, doesn't know what's in the box. What you just experienced is literally the source of reality. It's the absolute. That is the infinite. But the problem is we expect the infinite to have finite qualities. In other words, we expect the infinite to be a finite experience. It's not a finite experience. So it's going to be the most normal, standard thing that there is, because it is literally the substratum of all things. So it's the definition of normal. So the problem that we face is that we're expecting an extravagant experience when the thing we're really looking for is the simplicity of what we already are, of what we already experience day to day. It's all that we ever could or ever will experience.
Cool. I love all that. I don't really have much more to add.
Landing, Steve? I'm not sure if it's landing.
It is. I think I need to it's kind of maybe just being on the hot seat unexpectedly, but I really like going through that investigative process. So I'm gonna have to rewatch, and it's really valuable. So thank you.
When you're in the call in front of everyone, your mind can get a bit blank and it can be hard to follow along. But I definitely recommend watching through.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Thank you so much, Steve. I'm going to read the chat.